Hey everybody, welcome to the week 4 extra video. In this video, we are going to cover Substance Painter, a program that the computer labs at the school do not have access to, but you as students with student emails do have access to for free at home. So I'm going to show you briefly how to use this program, the power of the program, and its usefulness in texturing your 3D models. Obviously, Photoshop still has its place, and it's still very valuable that you learn Photoshop, but specifically for 3D models, it is worth learning Substance Painter as well. It's a very, very convenient way to texture your 3D models. So we're going to go over that today. I created a very quick sewer grate here. Very low poly. It's only less than 450 faces. It's made up of two parts, the outside part right here. We can go here to my scene collection for Blender, which is the same thing as the outliner in Maya. You can see that I have the sewer grate itself and the grate fencing, which is this. It is a solid poly here because we're going to texture in the opacity and the bars that you would normally see in a sewer grate within Substance Painter. We're not going to waste our time actually modeling that stuff within a 3D program like Maya or Blender. So this is ready. I already went ahead and UV unwrapped it. Here is my UV unwrap of the entire thing. It's only one material. I fit it all into one UV map here, which is great because it's a very simple file. Very, very convenient for us to fit it into just one UV map here. So I'm going to go ahead and export this out as an FBX. You can also export it as an OBJ if you want to, as long as you have the MTL file. And we're going to go ahead and open up and take a look at Substance Painter. All right, went ahead and opened up Substance 3D Painter. Welcome. Like most design software, this operates on a panel structure. Here in this first panel is going to be where our model actually shows up. This panel is going to be where the UV maps show up. And here we have something that's not too dissimilar from Photoshop. Here's where our layers are going to be. Here are the properties for anything you select in your layer. And here is the set of UV maps that you will have depending on what model you import in here. And down here, we have our libraries of assets that we can use to texture our models. We have basic base materials. We have smart materials, which are better materials. There are more complete materials that you can go ahead and edit and play around with to your leisure, as you'll see in a bit. We have masks here. We have filters. We have brushes here. We have alphas here, and we have some textures and some noise stuff here. So we have a whole bunch of features, whole bunch of assets that we can play with to create whatever kind of texture that we would like. So let's go ahead and actually import in our model so we can actually do something here, because otherwise, we can't really do anything here. So let's go to File. You can open sample files, by the way, for Substance Painter to just play around with it. So I would recommend the which one? I believe Meet Matte is the best one to work with because it's not already textured, so you can go ahead and play around with the texture of this to your heart's content. Again, to review, this panel has the model, this panel has your UV maps, this is your texture set list, so this is the list of UV maps. So we have one map here for the head, we have another map for the body, and we have another map for the base itself. Here is the layers that are located for every single for every single map. Texture set settings, we'll get to those in a little bit, and down here are the properties of that particular layer that you're on. So in this case, this basic layer is a brush layer, so we just have paint properties here, so we can paint on the model if we wanted to. But let's actually open up our model. So let's go to File, let's go to New, not Open, but New. PBR, Metallic Roughness Alpha Blend, these starter assets. There's a lot of different templates here. I would recommend just sticking with the starter ones, specifically the one that I'm using, Metallic Roughness Alpha Blend. This gives you, I believe this gives you control over opacity as well. So it's good to have this particular template here as your starter. Next, we go to File. Now we just find the sewer grate. I already have it opened up here so for convenience sake. So the sewer grate FBX or the OBJ. You can open up an OBJ as long as the MTL is also in that same folder where the OBJ is. So in this case, we have an FBX, so I'm just going to go ahead and open that. Next up is the document resolution. It's the same thing as the texture set settings. It's the same thing as saying what kind of resolution you want your UV maps and textures to be. So for this sample scene, they're set at 2K, 2048 by 2048. I prefer working with 4K, 4096 by 4096, but for the purposes of your project, you work, to whatever you feel is necessary for your work. I prefer 4K. Sample scenes are in 2K, but work to whatever makes sense for your project. We don't have to play with any of this other stuff. It's just these three things: the template, which I would recommend this one, these starter assets, the file where you select where what FBX or OBJ you're using, and the document resolution to determine the resolution of your textures. And then you just say, okay, we don't need to save this, so I'll discard that. And there we go. There is my sewer grate now inside of Substance Painter. Some basic controls while we're in Substance Painter. There is a basic light. If you hold down Shift and the right mouse button, you can go ahead and rotate the light around. It's a very, very basic light here. We can play around with the lighting a little bit later, specifically when we cover the shader and display settings up here. But for now, we can play with the lighting just by holding down Shift and the right mouse button here. Included on the Moodle will be a document similar to the Blender shortcuts document that will have a series of basic shortcuts for Substance to help you get started. But essentially, if you know how to use Maya, you already have a head start on Substance Painter. So you can use the middle mouse wheel to zoom in and out. You can hold Alt and the middle mouse wheel to pan the camera around. You can use the right mouse button to zoom in and out, or scroll the mouse wheel again, as I said. And you can hold Alt and the left mouse button to tumble the camera, rotate it around as such. You can also press F to focus in on a particular object in Substance Painter, just like you can in Maya. If you hold down Control and the right mouse button, you can change the flow of your brush that you're working with. And the holding Alt, Control, and the left mouse button controls the size of the brush that you're working with. So the strength and the size of the brush you can easily manipulate with basic shortcuts. Additionally, if, for example, I made some change to this sewer grate, for example, let's say for the sake of argument that I didn't need the grate fencing, so I just got rid of that from Blender, and I exported it again. So let me just go ahead and export it again. File, export as an FBX. I'm going to call this, let's see, I want to limit to mesh. I want to ensure my geometry is smoothing face, and with that, I'm going to call this sewer grate version 2. And I'm going to export that out, and we're done with that. Now, let's say I made that change in Blender, and I want to, and I want to swap this current version of the model with that new version of the model. But let's also say that, for the sake of argument, I already started doing some basic texturing. So, actually, let's go and leave this layer here. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that I started doing some basic texturing. Let's say I have the color red here, and let's say I started to make something here, right? I already started doing some work here, right? So what do? Do I have to just delete everything and start all over? No. You can go up to Edit. You can go to Project Configuration, and then you can just select the new FBX here, and then you say OK, and then it'll update. Substance Painter will update smartly as long as you don't mess with the placement of all the UV shells that you have in your UV map. Then Substance Painter should very smartly update as needed to make any changes in your model that you create in Maya or Blender. But I don't want this version, so I'm just actually going to go back to Edit, Project Configuration. I'm going to go back to the original sewer grate FBX and say OK, good. I'm going to next actually start the workflow for actually texturing this object. So the first thing I want to do, the first thing I always do whenever I work with an object here in Substance 3D Painter, I always delete the initial layer they give me. Most of the time, I'm not going to use that, and if I do end up using a layer, it's going to be one that I add in later. So that initial layer that they give me, I just get rid of that. For each and every single UV map that I have for my model, I do that. In this case, I only have the one map, just for simplicity's sake, but that's usually what I do. The second thing that I usually do is I usually head up here to the display settings. This environment map here is currently set to a panorama. That is the default. I usually change that over to Studio 2. That's something you don't have to do. I like doing that because Studio 2 just gives you more representative default base lighting as opposed to panorama, which gives you outdoor lighting, which depending on where this where this asset is going into Unity, or depending on what makes sense for the asset, you may not want outdoor lighting. So usually I set it to studio lighting, Studio 2 lighting, just to give me a nice baseline lighting to work with. The next thing I do is I pick a default material and apply that and just start working with it. So in this case, I have choices. I can either tackle the grading or I can tackle the outside first. Either way, I'm going to need a base material to work with. So scrolling through this, we have clays, we have fabrics, we have metals. This is polished, this is rusty. I already pre-selected this just to make sure this is what I want to work with. And yes, this is exactly what I want to work with for this demo here. So I'm going to go ahead and apply it. Depending how your UV maps are laid out, it should apply quite well. So in my case, I have some pretty good UV maps. All I did was just to redo that step. All I did was just grab it with the left mouse button and just drag it over to where the layer used to be and just place it in there, and there we go. We have metal rust. At this point, I think I want to focus in first on getting the grading here. So the illusion of more polygons and more faces than there actually are. So let's go ahead, and the first thing I'm going to do is add a fill layer. So you're normally going to be working with either the materials that you have down here or in the Smart Materials, or anywhere else down here in the libraries available to you via Substance Painter, or you're going to create your own fill layer. So I'm going to create a fill layer here. I am going to add a black mask. So all I'm doing now is just right-clicking and then just going down to black mask. This is one of the most important things that you will be doing often in Substance Painters, adding black masks to layers. Okay, these next few steps here to create the illusion of more of bars here, it's going to be something that you're probably not going to normally do whenever you bring in your own 3D models into 3D Painter. But to create the effect I'm looking for, I'm going to have to go through these sort of weird steps here. So I'm going to be silent as I work kind of quickly to get the specific effect I want here, and then I'll walk through what I did. Okay, so that is the basic process of creating a grading here, the illusion of more polygons than I actually have. So let's walk through what I did. I added two I added two effects below the mask of my fill layer here, and those effects were a fill and a filter. You're not going to be using fills and filters normally, so don't worry about actually playing around with these that often whenever you're working with your models, unless you're trying to create something specific like I am here. Chances are you're probably not using fills. You're probably not using filters. I did use them though. I went ahead and went to the grayscale, and from the grayscale, I went to my textures library here. I found the weave, which I already did some previous testing on and determined to be a pretty good pretty good substitute for actual modeled grading here, and just applied that, and then tiled it a lot to normally whenever you tile things, you want to make sure that you don't tile too much so that it's not obvious that it's such a repeated pattern. But considering that this pattern is just bars, it is okay that this is tiled a lot. In fact, I probably could have pushed it even more. The limit is -32, but if you type in -48, then you will be able to manipulate it and even further if you wanted to. After that, I also added in this filter here. This is the filter, and from the filter, all I did was add in this invert effect here to create the to create the opportunity for transparency. After I added in this filter, I went ahead and jumped over to not the mask for the not the black mask that I created, but the actual original fill layer that I created when I first selected fill layer. And from there, I just went down to my opacity settings. You have opacity settings if you choose the starter templates that I used. If not, then you have to go into your texture set settings and actually add it in yourself through channels. If you don't have access to opacity, but since I selected the correct starting template, I have access to opacity here. If you don't even see opacity when you click when you click the add channels here, then you can go ahead and go up to, I believe it's shader or the shader settings here, and change your starter template to something else. Again, I have the PBR Metal Rough with alpha blending. This is the preferred starter template that I like to work with because this gives me control over opacity and transparency and stuff. If you don't have that, then I would recommend that you take some time before you actually start a scene, or after you start a scene, to change your shader settings to PBR Metal Rough with alpha blending. That way you have access to opacity if you want to. In my case, I had access to opacity, so it was at 1, and now it is at 0. So all that white there just disappears completely and just becomes a transparent illusion there. The effect is not complete though until we change the material of what is behind, aka this little bit here. So I'm going to do something that I very quickly glossed through when I was creating this grading, and I am going to create another layer. So let's go ahead and start. Let me just go ahead and create another fill layer here. Again, normally when you're working with 3D models here in Substance Painter, you're normally going to be creating fill layers. So I'm going to put this fill layer down here. The order of your layers matters, just like it does in Photoshop. Okay, so in this case, I have this fill layer. I don't want this layer to show up for every single aspect of what I'm doing. Because for this particular layer, all I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of height. I'm going to get rid of opacity, normals, emissions, and metal. I'm just going to keep the base color and make that pure black here. And for the roughness, I am going to increase all the way to 1 so that there is absolutely no shininess. And the reason I'm doing that is because that is going to be the background for the grate. Now, as you can see, it's affecting everything, not just what's behind the grate there. So what we need to do first is add a black mask. You can see now that it's disappeared from the entire model here. That the dark color there. Next, with our mask selected, we want to go here to this polygon fill right here. At this point, you can select anything you want here: triangle fill, polygon fill, mesh fill. I prefer using UV chunk fill. And with UV chunk fill, I then prefer to work within the UV editor itself. And now, with 1, the the color that I have masked will appear in any single UV chunk that I select, and if it was at 0, it would disappear. So for example, let's say I wanted to make the outside just pure dark, right? All I have to do is just select it with this with the scale here turned all the way up to 1, and now that dark color appears here and is reflected in my mask. If I don't want this, and I don't actually want this, then I will go ahead and set this all the way back to 0. Select either the UV chunk here in the 3D model viewer or here in the UV editor, where I prefer to work, and I will just select that and it just disappears. Where I want to actually set that darkness to is here, because this is the area behind the grate. And now if we unselect the black mask and just select the regular fill layer, we can see we now have a much nicer effect here, a much more interesting effect here, where we have this grate and we have that darkness right behind it. So that, I think, is working a lot better already. Next up, this metal rust here. I would like it to be applied everywhere except for this this dark part here. So I'm just going to go ahead and just create a mask for that as well, and just apply that to every single chunk, where I can either individually select them or just left click and drag to select everything. And there we go. Now we have a nice, neater, more controlled, more controlled layers here that accurately tell us what's going on in each scenario. Now this one is the darkness that is behind the grate. This one is the grating itself. It's actually a folder that I created, and this is the metal that permeates over the entire grating here. The next thing we can do to improve this a little bit more is add in a regular layer. So again, I usually delete the regular layer that is already set up with your Substance Painter models just at the beginning, because I want to make sure I have a nice baseline to work with here. But after I'm done after I'm done applying basic textures and doing basic effects, then I don't mind creating a layer here. I'm going to go ahead and add a black mask to this, as you should for most every layer that you work with. In this case, I'm going to paint only on the outside here. So I'm going to select just this outside area. I'm going to select these chunks here. They're not immediately represented in the black mask, but as soon as you unselect the black mask, you will see that the things that I selected to appear in the mask do appear. It just takes a second to load up sometimes. And you know what? Actually, real quick, I'm also going to select the grating here as well for my paint effects. All right, so at this point, I am free to use whatever brush I want. So we have access to any kind of brush we want. We can also go ahead and use alphas here for our brush. So we can use regular brushes, or we can use alphas for our brush. And in this case, I think I'm going to use an alpha, because that's more currently what I'm aiming for. I think I'm going to use this, and I think the only things I need from this are color and the roughness, and that's it. The base color right now is red. Let's make it white. Let's actually make it more sort of yellowish white there, like that. And the roughness we can increase, because I don't want it to be that shiny, but I don't want it to be, not shiny at all. So let's make it 0.4. That might be a good compromise. Again, control the left mouse button controls the flow up here. So the partly its opacity, and the right mouse button controls its size. So let's make it, this size right here. And let's go ahead and just apply it and see what it looks like. We actually can't see it right now because this layer is below the metal rust, but if we go ahead and place this on top of the metal rust, we can see that this layer did in fact apply, and that looks, not half bad. Like a little stain mark there, and we can add some more. Let's pick something else to use for our stuff. Maybe drips. That might make sense. Let's make this darker. And let's make it even less shiny. Or let's make it a little bit more shiny and see what that looks like. Let's make it smaller. Control. There we go. Or we can just go up here and just change the size up here. And let's add that in. That doesn't look too bad either. Good. Next, we can probably repeat that or just add a different one like this. What does this look like, I wonder? That looks pretty good. And we can add one over here as well. Sort of blend it with this one there. Okay, that's starting to get somewhere. I'm going to speed up as I work to improve the overall appearance of this with some paint effects and with some minor editing to the layers that I already have. So here we go. Okay, I am happier with this now. In the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and just stop working with this for now. I'm going to highlight a few of the things that I did. I went ahead and went back into the grading section, into the color of it, and got into the main fill layer of it, and got rid of the color, so I can get rid of the weird outline that was going on with the with the weave that I created here for my grading. Um, Played around with the roughness and the general color of the metal. The roughness, for those of you that don't know, the lower the roughness is, I have it in 0.55. The lower the roughness is, the shinier and more reflective an object is going to be, and the higher the roughness, the less shiny and less reflective that the object is going to be. In some cases you're going to want one or the other, or you're going to want a nice middle ground. In the case of this, I went for the nice middle ground here. Played around with the color a little bit, and I added various alphas and just did some general minor painting on this using my basic layer here. I used a combination of brushes here that are available in Substance Painter as well as alphas that are already previously available in Substance Painter to create a nice some nice splattering to really mess it up and really make this feel old and kind of disgusting looking. So yeah, there we go. The texture, for all intents and purposes, is finished. I'm happy with how this looks. I can play around with the lighting a little bit. You can't really get that great of a lighting in this basic in this basic view. If you wanted to render or just see your model with improved lighting within Substance Painter, all you have to do is go up here to this camera, which is the eye ray. And I'm going to go ahead and just activate that for us right now. It's going to take a second to warm up, but once it does, we can see a nice higher quality render of what we created within Substance Painter. And go ahead and rotate this around a little bit just to get a little bit of a nicer feel for it. It looks pretty good. If you wanted to render within Substance Painter, which is perfectly acceptable to do, it's a very powerful rendering software as well. You can go ahead and play with the display settings here to change the lights if you wanted to. And here you can play around with the resolution depending on what resolution you were looking for your portfolio. You can also change the max time that it takes for the for the render to look better and better. Right now, I have it. The default is a total of 1,000 iterations, and with the 10 seconds that the eye ray has to work, it only gets to about 300 something of those. You can increase the time. You can increase the resolution. You can improve the emissive intensity if you have emissions within your textures. Emissions, by the way, are just glowing. Are glowing sections. We're not worrying about that for our own model, for our own introduction into Painter here. But if you wanted to have textures that glowed, you can do that in Substance Painter. It just takes an emissive layer, which is something we can talk about at another point if interested. All right, so this is finished. I want to go ahead and export this and get this into Unity. So how do I go about doing that? Well, it's actually quite simple, thankfully. All we have to do is go up to File. We go to File. We go to Export Textures. From here, we can choose the folder we want to put them in. So I'm going to put them in the desktop. I'm just going to call this new folder. I'm just going to call this Textures for simplicity's sake. I'm going to select that folder. That's where it's going to go now. The output template is PBR Metal Roughness. You can change that if you want to. I would recommend you don't. You just keep it as is. But depending on what kind of effect you were looking for, I would recommend you go through this. It even has some Unity render pipeline standard output templates. If you want to experiment with those, you don't really have to, because the files that are going to be generated just from PBR Metallic Roughness can be implemented in Unity anyway. But for your purposes, if you want to experiment, then feel free to play around and pick something here. We got we have Arnold here. We have Unity and Unreal. There's a whole bunch of different output templates you can play with to experiment if you want. The file type, I'm going to keep PNG, but Targa is also acceptable. It's also listed here somewhere. Let's see. Yes, there's Targa. I usually go for 16 bits, but that's up to you. The size, you can base it off the texture set size of 4K, or you can just dictate down here to have it be 4K or whatever size you want it to be. Padding, I don't really touch padding. At this point, it says that it's going to be exporting 6 total textures. Let's go ahead and export them and see what happens. It takes a moment here. You will know you're done once you have this export successfully finished in blue and you see the files that have been generated here. So yeah, let's go ahead. We can just close this after that's done, so we can close that. I'm gonna go ahead and open up my my folder for the textures here. So let's go to desktop. Let's go to textures, and let's see what we actually got from all that, shall we? We got these files generated. So we have this 4K base color file, which I will go ahead and drag in here. We got this emissive file. We have a height file. We have a metallic file, a normal file, and a roughness file. Those are the general basic files that are going to be spawned in that will be created whenever you make textures. As you already know, we don't actually have any glowing parts in our texture here, so I'm just going to delete the emissive because that's useless. It's just, taking up space. This height map that we have here, we don't need this either. We could use this if we wanted to, but we already have a normal map, and when it comes to the bumps of textures, you're usually going to rely on normal maps more than you will on any particular height map. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to delete the height map as well, because we don't need that either. At this point, we're left with just 4 textures: the base color, the metallic, the normal, and the roughness. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open up Unity, because we have everything we need. We have the textures, we have the model, the FBX of the model. So let's just go ahead and open up Unity and just get all this in there. So let's go ahead and create some folders here. I'm going to create a quick folder here. This one's going to be called My Particles. This is for something that I did here in this scene previously in another video, so don't concern yourself with what that is. At this point, all I'm going to do is import my FBX first of all. So let's go ahead and go to Import New Asset. Let's track down my FBX, which should be under Week 4, Sample Projects, Sewer Grade. Here it is. The Sewer Grade FBX, not the version 2, but the regular FBX. Perfect. It's in. I can extract my materials if I want to, or I can just make a new material here, but I'll just extract it. That's fine. I will go ahead and extract this. This is, I'm going to place it in the same folder that this Maya file, that this FBX file was brought in. So I'm just going to say select folder. There's my material right next to it, the sewer grate material. Perfect. I'm going to bring the sewer grate into the scene right here. This is in Blender, so the scaling is a little bit off. I'm just going to go ahead and place this appropriately. -90. Might go ahead and scale it up a little bit just so we can see it better. Kind of just plug that in there, right there. That's good. All right. We have our FBX. We have our materials. We created all those textures via Substance Painter. So all we have to do now is just import new asset again, and track down in my desktop the textures folder, and in there I'm just going to grab these 4 and I'm just going to put them into the Unity game engine. At this point, we have a little bit of work that we can do before we actually apply this to the actual model itself. So let's take a look at all these textures. You may recall that in Substance Painter I was working with 4K, and if we look at the inspector for these textures that I created, you'll see that their default size right now is 2K, 2048. Just by selecting this dropdown, we can go ahead and just up that to 4K right now. So we can just go ahead and do that. We can select multiple textures at once and do that at the same time. So we have 3 selected now. I'm just going to go ahead and up those to 4K. So I'm going to go ahead and apply. You know, for the purposes of space and performance, you may want to lower this number down if you want to, depending on the kind of scene and project you're working on. It's just something here that it's just good to know that this is here, so that you can play around with the resolution, especially if you ever find yourself in a situation where, let me apply these first, and then I'll talk about that situation. So we have the sewer grate material. I'm going to go ahead and lock in the inspector so it doesn't change to anything else, and I'm going to start applying my my materials. And because this material is already applied to the is already applied here to the to the sewer grate, I should start seeing results immediately. So the albedo. This is the metallic. This is the normal. Apply there. Fix now. Yes, thank you. And the roughness we will have to apply by changing the shader to Autodesk Interactive. And we have roughness. So we're almost done. You'll notice that we're not completely done yet because we're actually we actually don't have the opacity that we created before. That is thankfully a very simple fix. All we have to do is similar to what we did in our main videos. We're going to go up to the rendering mode here. We're going to change it from opaque to cutout, and now we have that that opacity added in. That nice illusion of more polys than there actually are for this particular model. And at this point, we can go ahead. We can we can play around with the albedo if we want to manipulate the color even further. As you may want to. You can go ahead and play around with the, let's go ahead and unlock this. You can go ahead and play around with the settings for the individual textures. So, you know, for example, you may find that for some textures that are brought in, they are really, really low resolution. like 128 or something. That isn't because the textures themselves were created as low resolution. It's because Unity default sets them to 128 or 512 or something like that. So if ever you come across a situation where you see textures that are really, really, really low quality, check out their inspector in Unity, because chances are that Unity default set them to something really, really low. And, just boost them up to whatever you want them to be. So this has been a brief introduction into Substance Painter. I'd be happy to make more videos about Substance Painter specifically if interested. Otherwise, I will leave it to you to open Substance Painter for yourselves and experiment with it. Similar to other things that we're going to be working on this semester, one of the best ways to learn Substance Painter is just to bring in some basic models or work in with the with sample models that Substance Painter already provides, and just try stuff. Just try stuff. Just look online for potential solutions and creative and creative uses of the program, and just try to make your own thing out of it. And before you know it, you'll be making some pretty decent textures really, really quickly. So this has just been an extra video about introducing you to Substance Painter. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you got something out of it. I hope you decide to try out Substance Painter for yourselves. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great day. Bye-bye.